What's up, gamers? It's me again, Waifu Belector, the only fair human on Earth, and we've kinda got some cool, fun, good news here today. I'm pretty much just excited about a game and I want to talk about it. But also, beyond that, I want to talk about current gaming trends and where they could be going, possibly implied by this game, among other things. So let's just kind of get right into this, and also remember to give the video a like if you end up enjoying at the end. Okay, so last week we had the latest state of play. I thought it was okay. As just a fan of games, I naturally saw some stuff that interested me, and one of those things was a game called Tides of Annihilation. This game had never been shown before as far as I know, completely new and out of nowhere, developed by a completely new and out of nowhere studio called Eclipse Glow Games, who I believe is based in China. Anyway, this game just randomly appears and gets shown, and it looks really cool. It's this stylish melee action game that looks familiar in some places that I'll get to in a second, but it's still very distinctive. It still very much has its own vibe and energy from what I can tell, even if that vibe is derived from pieces of other vibes and other things. But it's like food. Alone, bread is bread, cheese is cheese, whatever's whatever, but stack a bunch of shit on top of each other and you've got a brand new thing. That's kind of the vibe I get from Tides of Annihilation, because in moments it does remind me of some other stuff, but never really directly on the nose and never fully the same, you know? And these are just my impressions from what little we've seen. My whole outlook is subject to change as time passes, but back on track. So the day after its reveal in the state of play, Tides of Annihilation then just dropped an 11-minute extended gameplay showcase. And this was about a week ago from right now, the day after the state of play. I just hadn't talked about it until now. So here we got to see significantly more of this game. And this was just gameplay, so there's no one explaining anything or any mechanical breakdowns, but still, there's more than enough to pique interest. But yeah, like I said, the game looked really cool in the state of play. I was interested, I thought it looked really good and wanted to see more, but after watching the gameplay showcase the next day, I was just sold. No fucking kidding, I'm sold. I'm buying this game. That's not me telling you this is gonna be the greatest game ever. That's just me saying I believe I can already tell that it seems to be something worth playing. And I'm gonna fucking play it, unless for some odd reason it starts to look like shit down the line. But I wouldn't count on it. The closer games get to release, they usually only start to look better. And this game already looks very cool. And the thing is, in the state of play, Tides had no release date, no release window, nothing. It didn't even say 2025 or 2026, just wishlist now. So as cool as it looked, I figured this thing probably isn't coming for a while. 2026 at the earliest, considering they wouldn't even commit to a release window. But then during the extended gameplay showcase, I thought, wait a minute, this looks way further along than I was led to believe. It just doesn't have the super early looking pre-alpha jank that you'd expect of a game that's really gonna be a while. And maybe that's just because they've really polished up the part they've intended to show. That's not ridiculous to think. But the part that really stood out to me on top of that was the HUD. I know it sounds stupid, but a lot of games that are further off tend to hide the HUD display during showcasing. That or the HUD shown is very dull and placeholdery, but neither applies here for Tides of Annihilation. We can see the HUD and it's very smooth and simple, but subtly poppy. I wouldn't say that nothing can change from it. In fact, I'm sure something likely will get altered in one way or another, but it just seems so ready to present in a way that makes me think the game might be coming sooner rather than later. In fact, despite there being no commitment to any sort of release window, even in the extended gameplay, I wouldn't be surprised if this game ended up coming out later in 2025 based on what I'm seeing. Now that's not a guarantee from me or anything, but I'm just saying, it's looking good. Oh, and speaking of the HUD, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that it is very reminiscent of Final Fantasy XVI. And even the way the character in Tides invokes the power of the Knights of the Round Table feels similar to switching between the dominant powers in FF16. And truly, I think FF16 is great inspiration if it is in fact inspiration. It's great action game combat inspiration. Combat and spectacle are the things that 16 got so fucking fucking right that it managed to be a good game despite getting other aspects so horrendously wrong. So it's actually not that difficult in theory for a game inspired by FF16 to be better than it, to me. Because 16 had some of the worst pacing I've seen in a game, as well as definitively the worst implementation of side quests I've ever fucking seen. Huge glaring pitfalls that are easy to avoid. If Tides of Annihilation had comparable combat that can hold a candle to FF16's action fun, then it should be child's play to outdo them on other fronts. Not sheer spectacle though, FF16 nailed that. Also, the Titan fight is like one of the best boss fights in recent memory, but anyway. Also, 16 had a pretty good story, not great as it gets nearly incomprehensible near the end, as is Final Fantasy tradition, but regardless, the tone of Tides of Annihilation feels completely different anyway. Tonally, it actually feels a lot like Stellar Blade, and you're probably saying, Stellar Blade was clearly inspired by Nier, why didn't you just say Nier? And it's because, as much as Stellar Blade continuously tries to beat you over the head with its bleakness, it still is an overall just somber feeling game that never achieves the same sickening air of existential dread as Nier. And from what little we have, from what I can tell, Tide seems very somber, but not brutal and overt like FF16, or wrapped in a quiet thought horror like Nier Automata. So just on the surface, I wouldn't expect the story of Tides to present similarly to 16. So I'd predict that they'll be able to be compared simply as story to story, good or bad, but not necessarily tonally or stylistically, you know? FF16 was doing its best Final Fantasy meshed with Game of Thrones, and I don't think we'll be getting any Game of Thrones tones here in Tides of Annihilation. Just from what I can see anyway. There's time for things to change. If you can't tell by my rambling, I'm excited for this game. I think it looks good, and as I said, I'm already sold. But one other aspect of this game just makes me downright giddy. This is a fucking action game. Did you notice? It's a fucking action game, and it's not the only one. Did you notice? It's not a fucking Souls-like. I think the fog is being lifted, people. We are starting to come out of the Souls-like boom. We're not all the way out just yet, but I think we're leaving. You know, we've still got things like that Wu-Chang or Wu-Chang Fallen Feathers, whatever it's called, that game, and the first Berserker. Both of those are still coming, both still soulsing it up to a degree. The first Berserker, definitely. I played the demo and went, no thank you. Not this again. But yeah, Tides of Annihilation, action game. Lost Soul aside, action game. We only saw a bit of Onimusha, but that didn't look like a Souls-like to me. Phantom Blade Zero, action game. This wasn't happening before, not in the middle of the boom. Games being very blatant and overt about being action games, that wasn't happening. You were getting Souls-likes and the pseudo-Souls-likes. And a lot of those pseudo-Souls-likes were action games ultimately, but needed to Souls themselves up a little bit to fit in. But I think it's ending. I think an action game renaissance is happening. And in my opinion, gaming will be all the better for it. Some very exciting things on the horizon, if you ask me. And speaking of Onimusha, speaking of Capcom, I wonder if it's possible for this boom to ignite more Devil May Cry, you know? A lot of DMC fans have been wanting more DMC, obviously. And if games like Tides and Lost Soul Aside and Phantom Blade Zero come out and they do good and they're received well and we are in an action game renaissance, and if Onimusha is kind of what we think it is to some degree, and it also does well, oh, then DMC is coming back. And there's already rumors that the first Devil May Cry is being remade, which is really cool. But a Devil May Cry 6 could be coming even faster down the pipeline if Lost Soul Aside and Tides and especially Onimusha do good, you know? So it's all very exciting. But alright, that's been my talk. Just some genuine gaming excitement, some speculation and analysis. Leave your comment with your thoughts. Oh, and by the way, how do we foster a respectful comment community? How do we do that and keep things fair with fair takes? Because unfortunately, it seems like the only way to generate a positive, respectful community is to be a channel that generally doesn't critique at all, only looks at the good and mentions the good of anything. And for me, that would be a bit disingenuous, and I'm just never gonna do that. But whatever, we'll figure it out. For now, drop your oddly aggressive comments about what you think, or more likely about how what I think is stupid, and you know, we'll figure it out from there. Seriously though, thanks for watching. Remember to give this video a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to keep having good gaming talks with me. By the time this video is out, I should be knee deep in playing Avowed, so expect a video on that soon enough. That's all for now though, so until next time, I am Waifu Belector. I am just a normal guy. I like hentai, and let the action game uprising begin. Goodbye.